A single name falling into the silence of a late-night news cycle should have been nothing more than another tragedy in a long and indifferent world. Yet the moment a young entertainer was reported dead under circumstances that officials described as accidental, an unexpected tremor rippled across social platforms. Within days, over 180,000 people had signed a petition demanding a new investigation. The sheer weight of that number became its own kind of protest, a collective refusal to accept the neatly packaged explanation presented to the public. According to activists who followed the case from the very first hour, what frightened them the most was not the death itself, but the speed with which every related post began disappearing from domestic search engines as if a silent eraser were dragging across the national memory. Why would the passing of a single 20-something performer trigger a wave of censorship that operated with such precision and consistency? Why would entire threads vanish before readers could even refresh their screens? Online commentators began asking whether the tragedy touched a nerve far more delicate than the authorities were willing to admit. Some users claimed that the truth was not buried in an official police report, but hidden inside what they called a death ledger, a rumored catalog of 17 highly influential individuals whose names allegedly hovered over a series of unusual deaths in the entertainment industry. Whether this ledger truly exists remains unknown, but its shadow has become an inseparable part of public imagination. Welcome to a corner of the entertainment world where the spotlight does not bring comfort, but casts a long and distorted silhouette. For nearly a decade, one of the nation's most celebrated action stars had appeared frail, exhausted, and visibly worn down by chronic illness. According to past medical disclosures and public appearances, he struggled with a severe thyroid condition and long-lasting spinal injuries, leaving him dependent on medication and physical support. Photographs taken by reporters showed a man who moved slowly, spoke softly, and seemed to brace himself against the weight of every step. Rumors circulated that he had already prepared a will, a detail neither confirmed nor denied but widely discussed. Then, in the middle of the summer, something changed with a sharpness that unsettled even casual observers. The same man who had spent years in decline returned before the cameras with a body seemingly untouched by age. His posture straightened, his movements grew decisive, and his build appeared toned in a way reminiscent of his prime 30 years ago. According to fans who followed him closely, the transformation happened too quickly to be explained by ordinary training or medical rehabilitation. Commentators began offering theories ranging from extreme cosmetic enhancement to highly experimental procedures. Nothing was proven, yet the speculation refused to fade. The pattern that linked these events would become clearer only after the death of a 21-year-old martial arts student, a young man admired for his strength, discipline, and promise. His passing, reported as a traffic accident, was soon surrounded by claims that contradicted nearly every detail in the official narrative. What emerged was not a coherent accusation, but a collection of fragmented clues, whispered testimonies, and unverified images that seemed to point toward something larger, darker, and far more organized than a single tragic night. Before we proceed, we invite you to subscribe and stay with us through every chapter of this investigation. Together, we will examine the threads that many believe were never meant to be followed. For nearly a decade, observers watched the aging action star move through public spaces with the cautious rhythm of a man negotiating pain. His shoulders were slightly hunched, his arms occasionally trembled under their own weight, and his gait revealed the lingering stiffness of long-term spinal damage. According to older interviews, he had lived with a difficult thyroid condition that drained his energy, altered his weight, and disrupted his body's natural balance. Each public appearance from the late 2018 period to the early months of 2023 carried the unmistakable signature of a declining body. His face looked puffy at times and gaunt at others. His hair thinned, his voice softened. There were photographs in which his assistants were seen guiding him carefully through airports, as if the slightest misstep might collapse him. The shift that came afterward was jarring enough to divide public opinion into two uncompromising camps. In the middle of 2024, he stepped onto a stage during a promotional event with the confidence of a man who had reversed the natural aging process. The transformation was striking. His chest appeared fuller, his shoulders were rounded with muscular definition, that had been absent for years. Even the rhythm of his breathing seemed stronger. According to online comments that erupted within minutes, the change felt too abrupt, too improbable, and too synchronized to his long history of frailty. His supporters believed he had finally responded well to treatment or found a training regimen capable of restoring what illness had taken from him. Others insisted the pace of the transformation defied the limits of conventional medicine. In the absence of any official medical disclosure, speculation filled the void. Some users pointed out that certain details in photographs looked almost unreal. A portion of the audience noticed the unusual smoothness of the skin across his chest, describing it as unnaturally uniform for a man of his age. Others pointed at peculiar folds around his wrists, as if something beneath the surface did not align with the rest of his physique. These were interpretations rather than proven facts, yet the online debate grew fierce enough to push the actor to respond publicly. In a moment that surprised even longtime admirers, he lifted his shirt before the cameras to reveal a bare chest, seemingly free of any surgical scars. His gesture was meant to settle the controversy through transparency, but it had the opposite effect. Commentators slowed the footage down, enhanced the lighting, and dissected every frame in search of inconsistencies. What was intended as a rebuttal became an invitation to further speculation, particularly among those who believed that something essential about the man standing before them no longer matched the person they remembered. It was during this period of heightened attention that the death of a 21-year-old martial arts student broke into the news. He had been known in training circles as a disciplined and gifted talent, shaped by rigorous routines from childhood. Videos of his early performances showed a young man grounded by precision, breathing in harmony with each movement, displaying the kind of physical promise that rarely emerges by chance. His final live stream, posted just hours before he was reported dead, contained no spoken words. Instead, his lips formed a quiet phrase that viewers interpreted as "help me," repeated again and again as his eyes darted toward the corners of the room. There were no visible threats in the frame, yet the tension was unmistakable. According to those who followed the stream in real time, the silence felt unnatural, as if the young man were negotiating fear without permission to speak. The official statement described a sudden traffic accident along a rural highway. The vehicle was said to have veered out of control, tumbled down an embankment, and crushed the young martial artist inside. Yet the released images of the crash site began to circulate with details that viewers found troubling. Some noticed that the interior upholstery of the wrecked car did not match the color scheme of the vehicle he had been known to use. Others questioned the pattern of the damage, arguing that the deformation of the car's body did not align with the injuries described by those claiming to have seen the body afterward. These were not expert evaluations, but amateur attempts to reconcile the visual evidence with the official narrative. The most disturbing claims came from villagers who said they reached the scene before the authorities sealed the area. They described a surgical incision running along the young man's back, stitched with precision. From a medical standpoint, there are rare procedures that access certain organs from behind to avoid the chest area. Yet such operations are highly specialized and would not normally occur at a crash site. With no certified autopsy report released to the public, the story remained suspended between hearsay and dread, feeding a belief that the accident might have been something else entirely. As the controversy spread, attention turned to a plastination museum known for exhibiting preserved human bodies. A particular male specimen, according to visitors who photographed it discreetly, bore an uncanny resemblance to the young martial artist. The jawline, the proportions of the shoulders, and even the curvature of the ear appeared similar enough to ignite a new wave of rumors. The pair of shoes placed on the display, nearly identical to those seen in older images of the performer, became the focal point of countless threads. Some argued that such similarities were impossible without an intentional connection. Others countered that plastination models often exhibit generic or composite features without verifiable identification records. The claim remained unproven. Yet the idea spread with the persistence of a story that satisfies something deeper than logic. What united these threads was not evidence, but atmosphere. The return of a once frail star to startling vitality, the death of a young athlete whose final moments seemed to carry a muted plea, and the emergence of a museum exhibit that many felt resembled him too closely to ignore. We do not claim that these events are linked, but we cannot dismiss the intensity with which the public insists that a pattern is forming at the edge of the narrative. Before we continue, we would like to ask you a question. In your opinion, are these details fragments of an overlooked truth, or are they coincidences shaped into meaning by collective fear? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. When public attention shifted from the mysterious death of the young martial artist to the controversies surrounding other performers, the story entered a darker and more volatile stage. Another entertainer, widely known for his gentle persona and loyal fan base, became part of the unfolding narrative when an alleged autopsy document surfaced online. The document was never authenticated, yet the descriptions attributed to it were graphic enough to ignite outrage. According to users who claim to have seen the leaked text, the report suggested injuries that were inconsistent with a simple fall from height, which had been the official explanation for his death. The claims circulated rapidly, feeding a belief that something far more deliberate had occurred. As these allegations spread, a second thread emerged from an anonymous individual who stated that a video had been purchased from a dark web marketplace. The individual, whose identity remained unknown, described the footage in a way that unsettled viewers who encountered the summary. The room in the video was said to be both luxurious and disordered, with broken objects scattered across polished flooring. The entertainer at the center of the footage appeared injured and disoriented, attempting to crawl while a small dog barked frantically nearby. The mention of the dog became a detail that commentators seized upon, because it matched the breed associated with the performer. It was a detail difficult to dismiss entirely, yet impossible to verify. In the background of the described footage, voices echoed in a mixture of excitement and agitation. A woman's voice allegedly shouted words of encouragement that carried a tone of detached thrill rather than concern. According to those who believed the account, another voice issued a short command that listeners interpreted as either an order or a go-ahead signal. Audio specialists consulted by online communities attempted to match the male voice to public recordings of a well-known singer. Although one independent group claimed a high degree of similarity, no professional institution confirmed or validated such a finding. Despite the uncertainty, the claim gained momentum because it aligned with pre-existing suspicions, rather than any objective evidence. While unverified narratives continued to accumulate, a separate controversy began involving a filmmaker with a distinctive public image. At the exact hour when the injured performer was believed to have taken his final breath, the filmmaker posted a cryptic phrase on social media. The message contained only 2 words expressing satisfaction. For many, the timing felt too precise to ignore. Online investigators dug through past activity and pointed to an older message from years earlier that seemed similarly timed with another celebrity's death. The pattern was enough for some to believe there was a deeper connection. Although no official authority supported such conclusions, again, interpretation overshadowed confirmation. Belief in a ritualistic framework began growing at this point. Commentators who studied traditional customs and spiritual practices speculated that certain expressions, symbols, or actions might hold esoteric meaning. They referenced old ceremonies in which suffering was thought to produce spiritual energy that could be harvested, transformed, or repurposed. These interpretations remain speculative, but they captured the imagination of viewers searching for a hidden logic behind the alleged patterns. Even individuals who did not believe in such concepts found themselves unable to dismiss how quickly these theories spread through comment sections, message boards, and private groups. Meanwhile, reports emerged claiming that search terms related to the deceased entertainer were being restricted or removed from domestic platforms. Screenshots of deleted posts began circulating within private channels. According to users who tracked these deletions, certain keyword combinations were allegedly banned within seconds. Accounts posting about the case were said to disappear without warning. In response, alternative strategies were developed by online communities to evade censorship, using homophones of the victim's name, altering characters, or embedding the text within images. These attempts reflected both determination and fear, a collective sense that something valuable was at risk of being erased. Despite the tightening restrictions, the story continued to spread internationally. A petition hosted on an overseas platform accumulated more than 180,000 signatures, a number that that suggested a growing desire for clarity. Some individuals who participated in the movement framed their involvement as an act of solidarity. Others saw it as a way to counter what they perceived as an enforced silence. The divide between the official narrative and the public's interpretation widened, deepened by the lack of transparent communication from authorities. Rumors of retaliation also surfaced. Commentators pointed to several public figures who had spoken about the deceased performer before abruptly changing their tone. One personality shared vivid dreams involving the young man, which some interpreted as symbolic messages. After making these statements, he reportedly received anonymous warnings, predicting harm should he continue speaking. Although there was no confirmation that the threats were real, his sudden shift toward cautious neutrality fueled additional speculation. Another online influencer, associated with a prominent lineage, initially voiced strong criticism of the circumstances surrounding the performer's death. After a closed-door meeting with unidentified officials, he returned to social media with a noticeably restrained approach, posting benign content unrelated to the controversy. Observers interpreted this as a sign of external pressure. Whether the change in behavior was voluntary or compelled remained impossible to prove. More troubling were claims about the disappearance of the young performer's mother. According to individuals who followed the case closely, she had been in possession of private letters, notes, or personal documents left by her son. Unverified sources claimed that she had not been seen in her hometown, and that her relatives could not be located either. Some believed she had been placed under protection by a sympathetic group, while others feared the opposite. These opposing theories created an atmosphere of dread, strengthened by the absence of any public statement from her. What tied all these narratives together was not confirmation of wrongdoing, but the silence surrounding the families of the deceased. Silence can be an act of mourning, an act of fear, or an act imposed from outside. Without clarity, it became a canvas onto which every fear, suspicion, and unanswered question could be projected. As investigators of this unfolding story, we recognize how easily silence becomes the loudest evidence of all, even when it proves nothing. Before we move into the next chapter, we invite you to share your thoughts. In situations where official information is scarce, do you believe silence protects the vulnerable, or does it conceal the truth? As the story expanded beyond individual tragedies and into the realm of political speculation, the tone of public discourse shifted from grief to something sharper, heavier, and more volatile. Commentators who had once focused solely on the personal lives of entertainers now spoke about power structures, internal factions, and alleged rivalries within influential families. Although no official institution acknowledged these conversations, they spread with remarkable force. What had begun as an online debate about unexplained deaths evolved into a narrative woven from fragments of rumor, leaked messages, and testimonies attributed to anonymous insiders. Much of this escalation stemmed from discussions about a letter that the young performer was said to have written before his death. The letter itself never surfaced in verified form, yet an alleged transcript circulated widely. Readers claimed that the document described a fear not rooted in personal struggle, but in a sense of being drawn into events much larger than himself. He reportedly referred to figures using nicknames that online investigators attempted to decode, linking them to families known for political influence. These interpretations were speculative, but they provided a framework for theories that connected the entertainment world to inner circles of national authority. According to individuals who amplified these claims, one nickname in particular pointed toward a figure believed to wield influence behind closed doors. The supposed letter described eyes watching him, movements monitored, and a growing certainty that he had learned something he was not meant to know. These descriptions resonated with audiences because they fit into a long-standing cultural fear, the idea that visibility can be both a blessing and a burden, especially for young celebrities whose careers place them in proximity to powerful patrons. Whether the letter ever existed remained uncertain. but the emotional weight of its alleged contents shaped public perception. A second name mentioned in the rumored letter referred to a woman portrayed as a figure with access to considerable privilege. Online commentators suggested she might have been involved in overseas travel, private gatherings, or undisclosed projects. These claims lacked verification, yet they gained traction because they seemed to bridge the gap between private luxury and public secrecy. Commentators who studied elite social networks argued that such connections, if true, could explain the sudden disappearance of information surrounding the performer's final months. The most dramatic turn came when independent analysts attempted to match the descriptions in the alleged letter with publicly known family trees. They pointed to recurring surnames, generational lines, and long-standing alliances within influential circles. These conclusions were not supported by any formal documentation, but they formed the basis for a narrative in which the young performer's death was viewed not as an isolated tragedy, but as a consequence of intersecting interests. As always, the absence of direct evidence allowed interpretation to dominate, turning speculation into a self-sustaining cycle. During this period, additional claims surfaced concerning another entertainer who had been serving a prison sentence. Reports stated that he was healthy and adjusting well, yet contradictory stories from unnamed sources suggested otherwise. Some online users believed that he had been targeted because he possessed information related to earlier controversies. Without verifiable statements from legal authorities or the performer's family, these claims remained suspended in ambiguity. That ambiguity became fertile ground for additional speculation, particularly among those who believed he had been silenced to protect historical secrets. Alongside these theories, voices began discussing events dating back nearly a decade, reviving questions about an earlier performer whose death had been ruled a suicide. According to those who had followed the case from the beginning, the official explanation never fully addressed certain irregularities at the scene. As new attention returned to the case, individuals pieced together archived images, resurfaced interviews, and dormant social media posts. The attempt to reconstruct the past reflected a desire not only for truth, but for continuity, as if understanding one tragedy might illuminate the next. From this convergence of timelines and suspicions emerged a term that quickly gained symbolic power: the Ledger of 17. Commentators who used the phrase described it as a metaphorical list of individuals believed to be connected, directly or indirectly, to the events that had unsettled the entertainment world. Some framed the ledger as an allegory, a poetic representation of unbalanced power and unanswered questions. Others treated it literally, suggesting that a sealed record existed somewhere within the bureaucratic machinery, tracking connections that were never meant to be exposed. There was no evidence that such a ledger existed, but the idea itself became influential enough to reshape the conversation. The final link in this expanding narrative involved a young actor who appeared before cameras in a live stream shortly after the controversies reached their peak. Viewers noted tension in his posture, a stiffness in his smile, and gestures that seemed inconsistent with his usual demeanor. Some believed that the fruit plate arranged in front of him contained symbolic meaning. Others noticed a repeated hand signal that they interpreted as a coded message. These observations spread through online groups dedicated to decoding visual details, where every frame was analyzed as if it contained a hidden clue. Whether these interpretations reflected reality or collective anxiety remained unanswered. What mattered was how the public responded, with fear, curiosity, and a growing sense that the story had not yet reached its end. Throughout these developments, one theme emerged consistently: an underlying struggle between what was spoken and what was withheld. Every rumor relied on silence. Every theory grew from gaps in the official narrative. As the public attempted to reconcile conflicting details, the absence of clear communication from authorities became the defining element of the story. Silence itself became a figure of power, shaping what the world believed and how far imagination could reach. As we look ahead to the final chapter, we face a question that strikes at the heart of this entire investigation. When a narrative grows from unanswered questions rather than confirmed facts, does it bring us closer to understanding, or does it distort the truth beyond recognition. We invite you to share your thoughts before we move into the conclusion. When we step back from the fragments of rumor, testimony, and speculation that have intertwined throughout this narrative, we return to the single truth that cannot be contested. Lives have been lost, families have been shaken, and communities have been left searching for answers that remain obscured, regardless of how many theories circulate online or how widely they are shared. None can replace the clarity that only a lawful, transparent investigation can provide. For the young performers whose names have been invoked in these discussions, their stories deserve not sensationalism, but accountability. Grounded in verified facts and due process, their absence is real, and nothing imagined or theorized online can lessen the weight of that loss. The consequences of the public's response, however, are undeniable. According to observers who have monitored digital movements within the region, the surge of petitions, translated posts, and coordinated discussions has created a network of awareness that expands beyond national borders. Even without confirmed evidence, the global reaction reflects a growing reluctance to accept simplified explanations when the surrounding circumstances feel incomplete. This does not validate every theory, but it highlights a profound shift in the relationship between institutions and the people who question them. The legacy of these events, at least for now, is the emergence of a digital public that refuses to remain silent when confronted with uncertainty. For the families of the deceased, the legacy is far more intimate and immeasurable. Their grief exists apart from online discourse. It moves quietly in spaces untouched by trending discussions or public commentary. The dignity of their mourning must be protected, regardless of the narratives that may arise. The individuals at the center of this story were human beings before they became symbols. They had careers, relationships, and aspirations that extended far beyond the circumstances of their deaths. In honoring them, we must remember that speculation should never eclipse compassion. The broader lesson that surfaces from this case is the importance of transparency in environments where influence intersects with public perception. When information is limited or withheld, alternative stories will inevitably take root. According to sociologists who study online movements, communities often construct narratives to fill the void left by unanswered questions. These narratives may be fueled by fear, frustration, or genuine concern, but they thrive when official channels decline to clarify essential details. This dynamic can distort reality, yet it also underscores a deep desire for justice, fairness, and institutional accountability. As analysts and observers, we are reminded that the pursuit of truth must remain measured and responsible. Allegations that circulate without verification can cause harm not only to the accused, but also to the memory of the victims. Upholding the principles of due process is not a barrier to justice. It is the foundation upon which justice stands. In complex cases such as this, where fact and speculation intertwine, the most responsible path forward is one that prioritizes evidence, transparency, and respect for all involved. In the end, what lingers is not only the tragedy itself, but the call for answers that continues to echo across communities near and far. When public voices rise in unison demanding clarity, the question becomes unavoidable. Will the institutions tasked with protecting the vulnerable step forward to address the uncertainty, or will silence remain the final word? Only time will reveal which path is chosen, but the desire for truth persists, steady and unbroken.